yourself to your friends at your table if you haven't already done so. And we will begin. And if there is someone mastering the music here, could we have the music maybe turned down or off? Shopping mall sound. Oh well, I'll go with it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlene F. I'm Dean and Professor at Conrad Grebel University College. It's an honor. And I'd really like to have the music turned off. Working on it. Okay, I'll rise above it. It's an honor to welcome you to this evening to celebrate 40 years of Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Waterloo, and to build our Student Support Fund for Master's students in Peace and Conflict Studies. Please know that throughout the evening we will be using the acronyms PACS and MPACS. I'll say no more. But tonight mostly we celebrate the people of PACS, their past, present, and future impact on this local community, on this country, and around the world. I'd like to begin by welcoming some special guests, knowing that you are all very special to us tonight. I won't ask these people to stand, but we're really pleased to welcome representatives from the University of Waterloo and from our friends at the affiliated and federated institutions of Waterloo, and some local elected officials. I won't ask you to stand, but welcome to Catherine Bergman from St. Jerome's University, Scott Klein, Vice President and Academic Dean at St. Jerome's, Wendy Fletcher, President and Vice Chancellor at Redison University College, Peter Frick, Academic Dean at St. Paul's University College, Laurie Campbell, Director of Waterloo Indigenous Student Center and also Director of Indigenous Initiatives at University of Waterloo. I'm happy to welcome some elected officials to our event tonight. Welcome Dave Jaworski, Mayor of Waterloo. Welcome Ken Sealing, Waterloo Regional Chair. Sandy Shantz, Mayor of Woolwich. Welcome to David Martin, who is the Executive Minister of Mennonite Church Eastern Canada, the church body with which Grebel is affiliated. I'd like to thank our sponsors. We are very grateful for those who helped to make this event a financial success and add to our Master of Peace and Conflict Studies Student Support Fund. Our event sponsor tonight is RBJ Schlegel, and we're delighted that Ron and Rob Schlegel are here tonight. Thank you so much. Our dinner sponsors are Tour Imagination, Kindred Credit Union, Reeser Farm, EB Financial, Agree Incorporated. We're grateful for table sponsors who bought a table, invited friends. These are listed in your program. Please join me in thanking the sponsors who make this event. And I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Bob Rae and Arlene Hurley Rae. They're not quite here yet. And I was going to make a little dig about the last episode of Rick Mercer, which is embedded in most of our brains. So I think Bob will come fully clothed tonight. I welcome you here tonight, but we are all guests in this place. We're here today on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Conrad Grebel University College and the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, land given in treaty in 1784 to the Six Nations, which includes 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. Conrad Grebel as a liberal arts college was founded 55 years ago as a partnership between Mennonites in Ontario and the University of Waterloo. The Mennonites were the first permanent white settlers in the area we know today as Waterloo Region. They were led to the Grand River with its surrounding fertile soil and forest by the Mississauga of the Anishinaabe peoples who lived here and understood the land. In the early years of the 19th century, the Mennonites negotiated a land purchase of 60,000 acres in what would be called Block 2 of the Haldimand Tract. This land had been given in treaty to the Six Nations and was to support them in perpetuity. As we know, this didn't happen. Our work at reconciliation with Indigenous peoples includes decolonizing our historical narratives, our minds, and our hearts. We are conscious that this is an ongoing process, and we have a long way to go. We do this in humility and gratitude to our Indigenous neighbors, past and present. In that spirit, I welcome our friends from the Waterloo Indigenous Student Centre located at St. Paul's University College. And I'm pleased to welcome again Laurie Campbell, Director, to staff Amy Smoke and Jadam Hunt, and to student Chloe Blair, who will offer words and song to begin our evening. Welcome.
Amy Smoke. I am Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River. And as a First Nations person, a Mohawk person, we offer the Thanksgiving address. It's called the Ohandu Garwandepla, the words that come before all else, the preliminary matters. So what I'm saying in my language is that we're going to gather our minds together as one. We're going to honor, acknowledge, and greet all of the beautiful things given to us by Creator. All of those things in the natural world that we should be humble for and take a moment to be grateful for and remember our humility. You could hear a Thanksgiving address for a couple hours. I'm going to keep it short. I've learned 18 different things. I'll pick maybe 6 of them for you today. Siwate hosios ni kariwasa, ni kari ohandu kariwandefa, and they were no headstead. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, tanu diachin kuradu ne ongwesua, people. I told you, do hakni and what ni gura. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, tanu diachin kuradu ne, yeti di sama o wanja, Mother Earth. I told you, do hakni and what ni gura. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, tanu diachin kuradu ne, gani gabunya, the water. I told you, do hakni and what ni gura. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, tanu diachin kuradu ne, Condirio, the animals. Actually, do hakni and what ni gura. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, tanu diachin kuradu ne, gayerdi ni gawarage, the 4 directions. I told you, do hakni and what ni gura. Goigo anska under the walkway nuni ne angwat ni gura, the chirwane kuradu ne, sangwaya nisan, Creator. I told you, do hakni and what ni gura. Ona noa, I told you, jiwakwani doga, atona, otana, Sewagin Ha'a, Ise and Gorikanda, Yazwara Sundra, Nigana Wara Josua. I told you, Wanade, Dana Ona Eto. Now, again, as Indigenous folks, First Nations people, we often begin things with song. Today we'd like to offer a welcome song. It's called the Mohawk Friendship Song. And it's important then for me, being from the Six Nations of the Grand River, to offer a song of friendship and welcome to all of those on the Haldimand Tract today.
proceed with the word of grace. Creator, sustainer, healer, and giver of unending grace and love. Tonight we offer our thanks, especially for the 40 years of peace and conflict studies at Grebel. We celebrate the many people who have shared their talents and who continue to share their talents through this program, as they strive in small and large ways to make the world a better place. We celebrate the triumphs, the accomplishments, and the struggles that invariably accompany the life and growth of a program, and that also accompany the life and growth of its students as they seek to build peace and transform conflict. Most importantly, we celebrate the lives of the many people who, in one way or another, have been touched by this program. We give thanks now for the food that is before us, for the earth that has provided it, for those that planted, tended, and harvested, and for the many who collaborated to create the meal that is before us. We ask for your blessing for this celebration, for the conversations around the tables, and for the presentation that will follow. With gratitude we pray. Amen. It is so wonderful to see so many people here tonight, and now we are ready to eat. And I'm delighted to welcome our honored guests, Bob Rae and Honourable Ray. I think I see you in the back, so welcome. I didn't quite eat without you, and so I'm going to suggest that the table that you are seated at, and which is coincidentally is the table I'm seated at, goes first to the food table. And so we can just, the rest of you, we will begin at the back of the room, and there will be people helping you find your way to the buffet tables, up the stairs or up the ramp, through the buffet tables, and down the stairs in the middle to your seats. So we hope you enjoy the meal and enjoy the conversation, and the program will proceed as follows. So I invite, with some humility, table 4 to go first at the table.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I hope you have all been enjoying your dinner and some rewarding conversation. And if you came here feeling that you maybe don't know too much about what peace and conflict studies is, I also hope that you've begun to acquire some familiarity with other guests, or through your event program, the profiles on your table, the panels here in the room, and the slides above them. Much can be said about peace and conflict studies at Conrad Grebel University College. But at its core, PACS is about people and relationships. So I would like to dedicate my remarks to acknowledging many different kinds of people whose daily efforts and engagement have given Peace and Conflict Studies program something to celebrate tonight. So as the current chair of Peace and Conflict Studies, her name is Nathan Funk, I would like to begin by naming a series of different groups of people who are worthy of recognition. If I describe a group to which you belong, and there may be more than one group here, please stand while I briefly comment on your role. You can then return to the comfort of your seat as I call upon the next group. We will save applause until all the groups have been mentioned. So I'd like to start with appreciation for the numerous people who put in so many hours preparing for tonight's event. Whether you are affiliated with Conrad University College or with Fed Hall, could you please stand or step forward? So all those who helped to prepare this, logistics, event planning, cooking, serving, stand or become visible. Great. At Conrad Grebel, this has truly been an all-college event in its implementation, with particularly heroic efforts coming from our communications, development, and event planning staff, as well as from the Office of the President. Anyone who's ever worked on a large event like this knows something about all the sweat, teamwork, and persistent attention to detail required to pull things off successfully. We're truly thankful for your efforts, as well as for the highly professional service tonight, and the fine food offered by the Fed Hall staff. Teamwork and community effort are at the heart of the Grebel experience, but we also like to acknowledge the contributions of team leaders. And in this regard, I would now like to express appreciation for past directors of the Peace and Conflict Studies program. Could our past directors please stand? We have to single you out. Remain standing. This is my one chance to put them on the spot. Our founding director, Conrad Brunk, served from 1976 to 1985. He was unable to be with us tonight, so he is represented at this gathering by family. Dr. Brunk is credited with pioneering the interdisciplinary framework that has defined our curriculum from its formal beginnings as an undergraduate, minor, option, or joint honors degree. And this framework, this interdisciplinarity, still shapes the PACS experience today. As a teacher, Conrad Brunk brought his deep philosophical acumen to bear on questions pertaining to the roots of conflict and violence and the nature of justice and peace. Our next director, maybe Ron, you can stand and roll, you can sit. So differentiate. Our next director, Ron Matthews, with whom some of you chatted at the alumni gathering, served from 1986 to 1997. Ron Matthews took the PACS program in a dynamic new direction by bringing a focus on international development to the PACS experience, with a particular emphasis on experiential learning through internships in non-governmental organizations. During his term of service, 108 students completed internships with 40 different organizations in 38 countries. When you consider the rather minimal staffing resources available, for this kind of endeavor, you can get some idea of the energy and commitment it took. When I arrived at the college in 2004, I heard more than one person speak about Ron Matthews' great dedication to internships and listened to stories about he always kept files with all the vital information about students who were in the field within arm's reach at his desk. Is that true? Okay. Now you can stand, sit, well, Ron and Lowell, please stand. Well, Ewert, the third director, offered a similarly entrepreneurial and energetic leadership to PACS from 1997 through 2017. That's 20 years. There are some who might liken his leadership style to finding large boulders, strenuously prying them loose from the places in which they were wedged, and then rolling them downhill. However, as someone who has worked with Lowell for almost 14 years, I can testify that Lowell accompanies and guides his many boulders all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. despite the exertion and risk this breathless pursuit can entail. More seriously though, it is important to note that Lowell has always been extremely thoughtful and methodical in his approach to collaboratively shaping and implementing a vision for peace and conflict studies. And you can learn more about his vision on pages 5 and 6 of the event program. Drawing upon his training in law, his many years of service abroad, and his abiding concern with human rights, Lowell actively worked to augment PACS offerings by initiating the Conflict Management Certificate Program in 1998, the undergraduate BA or major in 2005, and then a master's degree in 2012. Enrollment in PACS grew substantially, with this expansion in programming and capacity making PACS more visible and accessible than ever on the University of Waterloo campus. So let's have both of you stand please for just one moment to thank you. Ron and Laura, thank you for your many years of dedicated service and for the personal investment and vision you've given to the PACS program. Next, I would like to acknowledge past and present PACS staff members. Would you please stand, past and present staff? People who do the administrative work that makes the program go. The strength of the program is made in no small part by the commitment, competence, and thoughtfulness of the staff who do far more than just answer emails or fill out forms in a timely manner. They are vitally involved in discussions about what we're doing and where we're headed, and are available to assist and guide our students every day. Without our staff, we wouldn't have much of anything to celebrate tonight. Words like thank you seem to fall a bit for it's short when we consider this fact. So thank you to the staff. Past and present Grebel faculty members now. And I'm talking here about full-time professors who have taught PACS courses, including cross-listed courses with other departments. That means you, Jeremy, and some others here in the room as well. They may not be only PACS, or lean possibly to history. Right. This is an extra meriting recognition. In addition to their essential role as guides to classroom explorations of diverse peace-related topics from arms races, civil society, communication, ecology, ethics, and human rights, to peace building, peace theology, reconciliation, refugees, third parties, and zero-sum games, our professors also perform many other duties, including advising and scholarly research, as well as the unglamorous labor of committee work and graduate admissions. Thank you. The next group of people I would like to acknowledge are past and present adjunct part-time faculty. Will you please stand? Everyone who taught courses in PACS as adjunct as part-time faculty, online or in person. Suffice it to say that without you, our programs would be profoundly diminished, and our students would be deprived of cherished mentors. Our part-time faculty members teach a very significant proportion of our courses. They bring a wealth of scholarly expertise and practical knowledge into the classroom, dramatically broadening the range of topics and applications our programs are able to encompass. Thank you. Now could undergraduate, alumni, and current undergraduates please stand. Talk about your PACS options, minors, majors, honors. One of the greatest privileges of being a professor in the PACS field is the opportunity to connect with and be inspired by energetic young people who have the ability to see the world with fresh eyes, with eyes of possibility. They see connections many of their elders miss, and sometimes astound their professors when they demonstrate their mastery of a concept or skill not merely by writing an essay about it, but also by going out to them and applying it in an innovative way. You can learn more about the creative work of our former students from the cards on your table, as well as from the panels on display in the room. Thank you. Where now are our graduate program alumni and current Master of Peace and Conflict Studies students? A couple in back, here, over there, right, around the room. We're very pleased that some of them were able to join us tonight. The PACS program is still quite new. We've welcomed 6 cohorts so far, but it has taken our engagement with peace and conflict issues to a whole new level. Our graduate students come from many different parts of Canada and the world, bringing vital issues alive within the seminar classroom. Their capacity to be with us is often in no small part dependent on scholarship support we receive from donors. During their studies, about 2/3 of them pursue local, national, and international internship placements and return to weave these experiences into their broader studies and training. You can see just a sampling of some of the places our graduate and also our undergraduate students have pursued internships on pages 7 and 8 of the program. There's a graphic there of the world and some of the many placements. Finally, I would like to draw attention to people who have either instructed in or participated in people have either instructed in or participated in one or more conflict management certificate program workshops. So if you've been a trainer, an instructor, if you have taken a workshop in conflict management, would you please stand? In addition to being an event for celebrating the 40th anniversary of PACS in general, it is worth pointing out that this year we are also marking the first 20 years of the certificate program, which has expanded the PACS community in numerous and meaningful directions. The Conflict Management Certificate Program connects us to people from many walks and stations and stages of life. People who have come together not just to learn skills and insights from experienced trainers, but also to share their journeys and wisdom with one another. Thank you for being part of our community. All these many groups have made our 40th anniversary worth celebrating. Now, it's very convenient for me in my role tonight that so many people are present who can explain to others what the PACS experience has meant to them, from their own vantage point as an administrator, teacher, or student. We are well resourced. What I would like to emphasize, though, is a sentiment that I think other staff persons and teachers share. It is a great privilege to be associated with the PACS department and to have the opportunity to convene spaces in which people can gather to reflect on their values and ideals, as well as their concerns, gifts, and practical aspirations. A space of togetherness in which individuals can ask deep questions about conflict, peace, and constructive change in the world, in their communities, and in their own personal lives. Over the years, we've seen many come, pass through, go on, and then report back. Their testimonies affirm to us that the program has an impact and that it is positively formative for those who choose it. To give you a sense of this, we are about to share a video that offers a glimpse of what PACS has meant to our students for so many years. You will hear accounts of how PACS has inspired, shaped life trajectories, equipped people with tools and active principles, and given many the confidence to tap their own creativity and inner resources, to find a sense of vocation. And I think that after viewing this video, you will, like me, be struck by the impression that Peace and Conflict Studies at Conrad University College is a magnet for truly interesting and dynamic people. You may also share what I regard as a humbling realization that, in addition to being our past and present students, these people are also our teachers. People who have so much to share about what it means to focus one's personal intentionality on the tasks and processes of peacemaking in the world today.
In 1977, the Peace and Conflict Studies program at Conrad Grebel University College and the University of Waterloo became the first peace studies program in Canada. Described by then Grebel President Frank H. Epp as innovative in nature, people involved in the PACS program have spent the last 40 years pushing boundaries, asking difficult questions, and working toward peace in our world. Growth in the PACS program has expanded from a few course offerings to an academic concentration. Then, in 1998, the addition of a professional development certificate program in conflict management to a department offering majors and minors, and most recently, a master's program in 2012. There are over 1,000 graduates from Grebel's PACS programs and tens of thousands of people who have taken at least one PACS course. Today, PACS partners with 21 undergraduate and 4 graduate departments at Waterloo to provide a multifaceted perspective on peace. This interdisciplinary approach underscores the belief that peace is everybody's business. Guided by PACS directors Conrad Brunk, Ron Matthews, Lowell Ewart, and many other dedicated professors and instructors, PACS alumni have taken their skills and knowledge out into the world and made a difference. Graduates have continued to stay connected to the program, sharing inspiring stories of impact, transformational change, and peace building.
I started studying Peace and Conflict Studies at Conrad Grebel in 1990. And at that point, my parents were very worried that I wouldn't be able to find a career in this field. That has not been an issue for me. Now I travel to Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq, and I work mostly with local peace builders, and then I try to find out what is it that they think needs to happen.
And so when I was in my last year, I applied to a number of police services. Being in Peace and Conflict Studies, I do know now, was one of the reasons why I got hired so young. Having an understanding of the dynamics at play in the community and how that might connect to policing and things like that helped me get a job in policing. And ultimately, it's those kinds of things in terms of creating dialogue and understanding people and where they're coming from and things like that help me in my job every day as a police officer.
I think PACS has helped me express the fullest version of myself. The concepts and practices that I was introduced to in my undergraduate degree were things that I kind of intuitively felt, maybe growing up or before that point, and I didn't really have the language or the framework for it to be able to articulate or live out. And so having that education really has helped me live those pieces out.
So studying PACS has been an important part of my career journey. I didn't really know specifically what I wanted to do going into school. I studied Peace and Conflict Studies as well as drama. So I didn't know how PACS and drama could go together. I just knew that I really cared about both of those things. But in the end, those things really did go together. And so I've used a lot of the values and knowledge that I gained from PACS to start a social justice theater company.
In 2015, I transitioned from my role as executive director to starting my own business. And I felt deeply called to the work of conflict and mediation. And so I started my own company, and then in 2016 co-founded Credence & Co. And so the certificate in conflict management greatly impacted my perspective and willingness to work in the area of conflict and hope in the world around conflict.
PACS has been such a formational part of who I am today that it has been really what's kind of been my foundation for working, whether that be working with others. I think about models that I learned, I think about experiences I had in the classroom when dealing with conflict with others. I often am thinking about my experiences on my internship. I'm often kind of using all of these things to kind of make me a better professional.
Now I work in an agency that actually goes out into the community and helps teach people about conflict. Specifically, my work is in the school system. And so my whole world is completely different. I ask lots of questions, don't make lots of assumptions. In corporate, I was always driving for the bottom line. So this is way different work now.
I find that that way of thinking about the world and that way of approaching other people and approaching problems that I learned here, it pops up everywhere that I go. My work right now involves engaging people on transitioning away from fossil fuels, for example, on creating a more sustainable society. And if we're going to do that, all the technology in the world isn't going to get us there unless we can engage people at that deep level, at the level of beliefs, at the level of perceptions, the level where we work in restorative justice.
Peace and Conflict Studies alumni speak for themselves. Their potential is limitless. The PACS program gives students a platform from which to leap into the future, a future where peace is possible. We look forward to the next 40 years of PACS at Grebel and the University of Waterloo.
I would like to very briefly note that this video was itself produced by Katie Steckley, one of our most recent graduates. Katie, could you stand? So now we can say that everyone here, no matter your prior level of familiarity with PACS, has had a taste of it. And it is time at this moment for a taste of something else, dessert. So you are free at your leisure to go to the dessert buffet. Thank you.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Marcus Schantz. I'm the president at Conrad University College. It's my job to introduce our guest speaker. And the problem is that our guest speaker, Bob Rae, is a person who doesn't really need an introduction. So I thought that I might highlight some things that didn't make it into the biography that's printed in our program. I came of voting age in the summer of 1990, the very month that a snap provincial election was called by Premier David Peterson. Bob was the leader of the NDP, and those were heady days. If you'll remember, the Cold War was ending, the Berlin Wall had come down, in South Africa, Nelson Mandela had been released from prison and was calling for reconciliation. Peace seemed to be breaking out everywhere. And for many people my age, in my generation in Ontario, Bob was the politician who represented the hopeful spirit of those days. He was the leader who gave voice to many of the concerns and ideals that my generation wanted to talk about, such as environmental protection, and the rights of Indigenous people. And he was ready to take a stand on those issues outside of the legislature. For example, we all took notice when in 1989 Bob was arrested with other protesters for blocking logging trucks on their way to cut down old-growth forest in Temagami in support of the Bear Island First Nation and its land claim. So in the provincial election of 1990, I voted in my very first election for Bob's party. I should add that that was contrary to my father's strong advice. Nevertheless, Bob won a historic majority and he became premier. Bob tells the story of his years as premier in his book From Protest to Power, a title that really does say it all. It's an honest, funny, self-critical account of taking power and of taking responsibility. A constant theme in Bob's writing and speaking are the problems of balancing ideals with reality and of reconciling principles with pragmatism. It's not a message that goes down easily in all circles, and maybe not even in every corner of this room. But I think it's a good and challenging message for supporters of our program in Peace and Conflict Studies to hear. Highlighting one of his core values, Bob once wrote as follows, quote, "I believe in community and in finding ways to affirm community in the heart of a world in turmoil and fragments." Acting on that conviction has often drawn Bob into the heart of serious conflicts, be it a dispute over natural resources here in Canada, or his recent work as Canada's envoy to Myanmar. He's always done his best to promote the causes of peace and social justice wherever he's invited to serve. and despite everything that he's seen, he's still a voice of hope. We're also happy to welcome Arlene Rae this evening. Arlene is a journalist, an author, and an advocate for many good causes, including children's literacy and mental health. Arlene and Bob have 3 daughters, and I was going to say 1, but now it's 5 grandchildren? 3 grandchildren.
Go on their way.
We'll work it out, but they're busy. More coming. Without any further delay from me, please join me in welcoming Bob Rae.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and it's a great thrill to be here tonight. And we only took about 3.5 hours on the 401. It's one of the largest parking lots in the country at the moment, and it's really good to come back to this part of the world, because it's over many years I have made many friends here, and continue to be very proud of my associations with just about all of those friends. There are 1 or 2 that I take some exception to. My friend Neil Aitchison is sitting at the back, and he demanded equal time for the end of the evening. So, and if we all leave quickly enough, that'll be okay too. It's great to be with Marcus and his wonderful family. Marcus's father may have thought that he was misguided at some point, but I had no firmer supporter when I was running for the leadership of the Liberal Party than Miles Shanson. I was very proud to have gotten to know him and to have been able to understand the values and the motivation that he had for building the kind of world that he wanted to build, and he did it in the most practical ways. And I'm very pleased tonight to see my good friend Ron Schlegel looking so well, because we work closely together. I'm on the board of the Homeward Research Institute, and it's been a great pleasure for me as well to see if I may say so, since Marcus raised this idea, the combination of pragmatism and idealism, which lies behind everything that the Schlegel family does in all of Canada, and it's wonderful to see you here tonight. Thank you so much. The good thing about a long ride is that it allows you to think about what you're going to say tonight, and I've actually had the chance to write 5 speeches. If you've got the time, I could certainly go through all of them. But what I wanted to do tonight was perhaps in a I hope not too reflective a way, is really to ask you to think a bit about some of the fundamental issues that we're facing, that the world is facing, that Canada is facing, and some of the things that we should have learned by now about what it's going to take to make the world a better place. My first thought is that conflict is inevitable. And one of the problems I think we have in life, generally speaking, is not to accept the reality of conflict and to understand that some kinds of conflicts are essential and important and need to be expressed. I think we're all familiar with people who say, there are no conflicts in my life, or there are no conflicts in this household. We have no issues here. There are no problems. Those people are usually in a position of power, and they're not usually tremendously self-aware of what's actually going on around them. But a little bit of that is in all of us. We assume a lot of the time that other people are like us, or that other people share our values, or that other people think the way we do, or that other people are just the same as us. And of course, one of our, I think, common assumptions is that we all share something very important called our humanity, our humanness, our frailty, our hopes, our aspirations, our quest for meaning, and our quest for dignity. And I think these things are pretty fundamental. But how we do that, or the way we express it, or the way we do it, is always full of difference. And the great social movements of our time, of my lifetime, have really been about people asserting themselves and asserting their own identity and insisting that their identity be fully accepted, even in the face of resistance, and even in the face of people saying, no, 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 you wait your turn, you come along at a different time. And so, the first thing that and I'm not a professor of conflict management or of peace and conflict studies, but in all of the work I do on mediation, the first thing I always say to people is, let's get the conflicts on the table. Let's not be afraid of them. Let's not be afraid to identify the fact that we have differences. And there are differences of background, there are differences of language, of religion. There are all kinds of differences. What little I learned in the car by my wife reading me the story of who Conrad Grebel was, I said, who was Conrad Grebel? I think I'm probably know more about him just about anybody else in the room. But the thing that I learned about the origins of Anabaptism, about the origins of the Mennonite movement, is that it was about people who had a quest for their own identity, and who had a quest for their own sense of meaning and their own understanding. We were talking at the table how much of it is related to the world of literacy, the world of the book. We wouldn't have had a Reformation if it hadn't been for the Gutenberg Bible. If it hadn't been for the fact that people suddenly got a hold of something they could read, they didn't need somebody else to tell them what it said. They were able to grasp it for themselves. And of course, Grebel had lived a relatively short life, and it was a life full of conflict, but it was also a life full of meaning. And perhaps by understanding and casting our minds back and thinking of, well, what were the conflicts then? The conflicts between different ways of worshiping God, different ways of relating to God, different ways of expressing one's sense of religious identity. And it was a brutal conflict. People were burned at the stake. People were killed. People were repressed because they had different ways of praying and different ways of understanding who they were, different ways of expressing themselves. And they lived in a world of deep conflict. And from that deep conflict came love. And sometimes in the West, we look at what's going on in the Middle East or what's going on in other parts of the world, and we say, why can't they get along? And you sort of say, understand something of our own history. We took a long time to figure out how to get along, how to recognize different forms of religious belief, and how to say, we're not going to resolve those issues in our lifetime. And the key issue is how do we get along with each other? Not by denying the reality of the other, not by refusing to admit the dignity of someone who prays differently or doesn't pray at all, but by recognizing that they too have a right to live and they have a right to their space. So, just as conflict is inevitable, we also should have learned by now that it has its limits. Some of you may recall a little book I wrote called The Three Questions, which were based on the sayings of a rabbi 2,500 years ago. First question, if I'm not for myself, then who is for me? If I don't speak up for myself, if I do not assert myself, if I am not allowed to be who I am, then I can't really expect anyone else to do that for me. That assertion of independence, of identity, of belief, is fundamental to the human spirit. But it's not enough to say I'm asserting myself. You then have to say, if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And that's why I think the struggle that we're in today is trying to recognize that, sure, we can complain, we can say I've been badly treated, or I shouldn't be paying so much taxes, or I should be moving ahead myself, or I haven't been, I. But that's not enough. We've got to recognize that only by doing things together are we ever going to be able to succeed and become even more human. And so just as all of us from our childhoods can recall, and Marty knows this better than anybody, hey, look up now. Rebellion is endemic to growth, to what it means to grow up. And we don't achieve our identity unless we first rebel against somebody else imposing their identity on us. Then, of course, as we get older, we realize our parents weren't so stupid after all. And there's something to be gained by learning from other people and accepting the authority that comes from that process of education and learning. The conflicts we see in the world today are different, but not entirely different from so many of the conflicts that we've seen in the past. The wars that were fought in the past were fought between countries, between large ideological groupings, between empires fighting for conquest in far-off places. The wars we see today, which, by the way, are as destructive as anything we've ever seen, are fought inside countries, inside nations. And they're often fought by people who have lived peacefully side by side for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then suddenly come to terms with what they think is some colossal difference between them. So the conflict in Yugoslavia, the conflict in Rwanda, the conflict in Myanmar, where I've been working for the last while. Of course, it has a long-standing history, but something has taken hold and made it more brutal than we could possibly imagine. There are today in the world 65 million people living in refugee camps. There are more people living in refugee camps today than at any time since the very end of the Second World War, which up to that time we thought was just the conflagration that would teach us all a great lesson about what the United Nations Charter refers to as the scourge of war. The scourge of war that we're facing today is not so much between nations or between empires, but it is within countries and within former empires. And it's a painful process to watch. So, for us as Canadians, we might think, oh, we're above all this. We've reached another place. We're different from all those conflicts. But we actually, if we look at our own history, we have to come to terms with the fact that no. We have a colonial history. We have a history of empire. Looking around the room, I can say most of us went to school at a time when we were taught, that Cartier and Champlain discovered Canada. That would come as news to people who've been already living here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Canada was not discovered. Canada was settled by people looking for somewhere else to go and somewhere else to live. But when they got here, they had to realize and come to terms with the fact that there were other people here. And so there was, just as there in many imperial situations, there was a battle for land. There was a refusal to recognize the dignity of the other. There was an unwillingness to admit that the life that was here was just as worthwhile, just as worth preserving, just as worth protecting, just as worthy of honoring as any of our lives. Different religions, different cultures, different languages, yes. But not inferior cultures or inferior languages. And we're only now slowly emerging from the recognition of the damage that has been caused because we failed to recognize the dignity of difference. We failed to recognize the quality and the equality of the other that we encountered. And we're only just now beginning to come to terms with this history and the damage that it has caused and what it will take for the reconciliation to take place. So I find when I go to other countries and talk to people about what I see, I don't go there with a sense of saying, well, let me tell you how we do it in Canada. No. It's in a much more inquisitive way that we say, well, we got this wrong. How did you get it right? And what are you doing? And how can we talk to each other and learn from one another? Because although we sometimes make fun of the politics that we see in other countries, even that of our great neighbor to the south at the moment, don't anyone think for a moment that we are immune to the forces of mindless populism, of appeals to self-interest and greed, and of people suddenly turning away from the demands of compassion and of recognizing of what it is that we owe each other. Which brings us to the third question, and that is, if not now, when? Which is, there are lots of reasons for putting off difficult resolutions of conflict. There are lots of reasons why we avoid what we have to face up to. It's easier not to. It's harder to say you're sorry with the understanding that with your sorry comes not just the apology, but the recognition that behavior has to change. And that process is painful. It's not easy. We would all prefer not to face those moments. And we would all prefer to put off the difficult tasks to another day. But I think what the question implies is that we don't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury of not seeking. Not to hope for peace or to pray for peace only, but to build peace. And the great thing that has happened here over a great many years is that from this tradition in this place has come an understanding about the centrality of the resolution of conflict and the building of peace. And an understanding that peace has to be built, that it's a constant effort that can't be put aside. Because the sources of conflict are deep in the human heart. And none of us is immune from the worst that the human heart could produce, and none of us is immune, thank goodness, from the capacity to build peace. And I think we all recognize that in doing so, we have perhaps found our mission as a country not to do something different abroad than we would do at home, but that what we do at home is what we do wherever we are. Yes, we're citizens of Canada, and we have a sense of place. And if there's one thing that the Rohingya crisis has taught me, it's that there's nothing worse than not having a place to call home. So I am so happy and proud that I have a home. But I'm also very aware that it's kind of contingent, all based on a series of historical accidents that have allowed me to come here and say, this is now my home. But we need to, I think, recommit ourselves to what has been great and what people have done before, and what will allow us to go forward with a great sense of confidence, a sense of humanity, and dare I say it, a sense of humor. Those of you who are offended by my appearance on Rick Mercer, here I'm really speaking to my wife, who felt there were some things about me she was prepared to share, but not everything, and that was certainly one of the things that she would rather I kept to myself. But I'm a great believer that if we can't make fun of ourselves and can't learn something from the resilience that humor gives to all of us, then we can't learn much. I want to wish everyone well, particularly I want to wish Marcus well in his work as president. Marcus and I worked together in a law firm many years ago, and I immediately recognized him as a wonderful young man. And now that he's not quite as young, he's certainly every bit as wonderful. And I can only say to all of you what I said to the selection committee when I spoke with him. I said, you are very lucky that he has chosen to try to do this, and you'd be crazy to let him go. So I repeat those words to all of you. Wish you the very, very best, and express my deepest appreciation to you for allowing me to share tonight with all of you. Thank you so much.
Children's rebellion, and for taking the time to come here tonight. I have a few announcements before we close the more formal part of our evening. Firstly, Bob has been very generous in spending time with us this evening. We thought it might be appropriate to thank you, Bob, by paying it forward in a small way. So Grebel will be making donations in honor of your visit with us tonight to two causes. The first is to our friends and close neighbors at Waterloo Indigenous Services Center. And we'll also make a gift in support of efforts to assist and advocate for Rohingya people, both here in Canada and in Bangladesh and Myanmar. Thank you. You'll notice that there are trees at your tables. They are white pine seedlings. They are known as the Great Tree of Peace by the Haudenosaunee. The text on page 10 of your program was crafted in conversation with our friends at WISC and also at the Six Nations of the Grand River. As it says, the Great Tree of Peace was chosen by the peacemaker to symbolize the uniting of the Haudenosaunee nations, Mohawks, Oneida, Onondagas, Cayugas, and Senecas, people who were later joined by the Tuscarora Nation. In celebrating PACS at 40 years, we lift up this powerful Haudenosaunee symbol in recognition of the importance of learning more about Indigenous visions of peace and on living justly together on these lands and around the world. You're invited to take a seedling home and to plant it, perhaps when the snow clears. I'm told that we need to make a correction on page 9 of your program. We reported that we expected to raise $10,000 this evening, but due to a last-minute surge in registrations and the generosity of many sponsors and participants, and let's face it, we didn't pay for your wine, it's going to be closer to $20,000 that we have. All of the proceeds from tonight's dinner will provide tuition assistance for our Masters of Peace and Conflict Studies students, and I can assure you that they greatly appreciate it. If you feel moved to help grow that total, there are donation slips on your table, and we can receive them at the registration tables at the entry. Thanks again to each of you for coming here and for supporting us on behalf of our students this evening. So that concludes the formal stage of this evening's program. And what can I say about the next stage? I believe that when planning an event, it's often a good idea to leave some space for spontaneity and not to plan things too tightly, and the next part of the evening fits that bill. A number of months ago, I sent Bob a long note suggesting that he could lead us in singing, a sort of 1960s hootenanny. I knew that Bob liked to play piano and liked making music with others. And then many of our guests tonight also like to sing together. I gave Bob a whole rationale about how singing can be part of peacemaking, it brings communities together, and so on. And in response to my long email, Bob simply wrote, yes. And that's about as far as it's gone. So I'm going to turn the evening back over to Bob now. You, the audience, are free to move around and participate as you like, and if it will help you sing more freely, the bar is still open.
I thought, in honor of sort of the age group that's here, I'm almost blinded by the shininess of some of what I think, is that I will do one song, and then if other people want to come up and do something else, that's fine too. But I'm going to start by singing Blowing in the Wind. So imagine that this is really just an 88-string guitar, okay? So anybody who wants to come up and sing or grab the microphone or whatever, it's fine. But I'm good for one song, so. And then please join in and sing, because some of you will know the song. And some of you may even remember the words, and if you don't, hum a few bars. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? And how many seas must a white dove sail before it can nest in the sand? How many times must cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? And how many years must some people exist before they're allowed to be free? And how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? And how many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? And how many years will it take till they learn that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. One more time. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. All right, who's next? Come on. I've already sung for my supper twice. Come on. Somebody else must know some songs. No. That's an easy one. Come on. Really? That's it? No one else can sing? The words to It's a Wonderful World. Who can sing? Come on.
Clouds of white.
got to be a little bit more talent out there. Neil Aitchison. Can sing a song. I think, is Alex here tonight? What's happened to Alex? Alex, come on up and sing. Alex, for goodness sake. Alex, get up here. Come on, get up. Neil, you must know some dirty songs. Come on up and sing something here. Come on. Do something inappropriate. Come on, Neil Aitchison, everybody.
I'm not a Mennonite. We're all Mennonites tonight. I remember Don Heron going up to Elmira. He said, the lady slapped him right across the face. Why? He said, I asked her, how many Mennonites do you have? That's for the United Church people. What about some old chestnuts? Come on, give me one. Well, there's an old crowd there. Yeah, how about that? Irene, good night, Irene. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Some nights she sleeps in pajamas. Some nights she sleeps in nightgown. But the nights that she sleeps in nothing at all, she is the talk of the town. Stop your gambling. Stop staying out late at night. Stay us home tonight. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Okay, we gotta have some more. Alex, come on, Alex. Alex, don't be shy. You can promote the theater while you're here. Anybody have a request? Because we're just, we're nervous. You are my sunshine. That is a damn big Look here, the other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I think I held you in my arms. When I awoke, I was mistaken. And I thank my sunshine. You are my sunshine, your only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. You're a handy thing to have around. Thank you very much. All right. Margaret, very much.
I intervened just as the evening was taking a really interesting turn. But I think that's enough. That's a nice capstone on the evening. Thanks, Bob, for being a part of that. I think we still have the hall for a little while, so you're what? Right. There's been a call for 606. So this is a thing where it's a Mennonite, a hymn that's beloved of Mennonites that we sing. I'm trying to be inclusive, so I'm going to let you know if you're not familiar with it that we'll all start singing, and you'll, if you don't know it, just please listen, and we'll see how it goes. Does someone have a note? Okay. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above. Praise Him above. Praise Him above. The heavenly hosts. Praise Him above. Praise Him above. Praise Him above. The heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Hallelujah, 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 amen, amen, hallelujah, 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 amen, amen, hallelujah, amen, hallelujah, amen. Sounded beautiful. Thank you. Good night.